What's up guys, my name is Ace, and Season 2 Reloaded for Black Ops 6 is here, and with this we saw a little bit of weapon balancing as well as some other key changes, and in today's video I wanted to go through and cover these in great detail. And let's just dive right into this and start it off with the weapon balancing that took place. The first thing is the GPR 91 saw a handful of buffs. The first buff is to its maximum damage range. This went from 17.8 meters up to 22.2 meters. And while you might notice here that your 5-shot kill potential to the body doesn't change here at all, that's still going to be 45.7 meters. With this maximum damage range, this is where headshots are most effective. So without the CHF barrel, you just need 2 headshots mixed in with body shots for a 4-shot kill. Or with the CHF barrel, we just need 1 headshot mixed in there. So this is going to be very helpful if you are planning on going for headshots. Otherwise, it's really not going to change anything with this gun. Next up, with the CHF barrel specifically, they have buffed the recoil on this, so they reduced the recoil penalty that you get for using this barrel. And as you can see when looking at it side by side, this is going to be noticeably more accurate with the CHF barrel, and this combined with that maximum damage range buff where we just need 1 headshot mixed in while using this barrel, makes this a much more attractive choice and really has the potential to push the GPR much more into the limelight. And then finally, with the GPR 91, they buffed our rapid fire rate of fire from 769 rounds per minute up to 800 rounds per minute, so that's a noticeable improvement there. However, they also slightly increased the horizontal recoil penalty, and looking at it side by side here, you can see there's definitely a little bit more horizontal recoil there, as well as slightly more vertical recoil just due to the rate of fire increase. And when it comes to our time to kill potential, with rapid fire, this went from 312 milliseconds for a 5-shot kill down to 300 milliseconds for a 5-shot kill. So some pros, some cons attached to that with the rapid fire adjustment. I'd say overall, this makes it a little more viable with rapid fire, although at this stage, I'm kind of leaning more toward the CHF barrel instead and just trying to get that 1 headshot mixed in. Then getting into the LMG category, they did buff the FENG 82, which I'm really happy to see. This is one of the newer guns that launched, and really, I just didn't see much good reason to use it. It's not that it was unusable, it just didn't really have anything that made it special or any better than any of the other guns in the game. And overall, I considered it to be well below average. But the first thing they did to buff this that I'm really happy to see is they drastically cut down on our pre-fire delay. It went from 55 milliseconds down to 25 milliseconds, and that is huge. That's actually going to make quite a big difference with this gun. You're not going to be waiting as long when you pull the trigger for that first shot to come out. They also improved our aim down sight speed from 400 milliseconds down to 370 milliseconds. And then on top of that, for our slide to fire and dive to fire times, these are also improved, so they're now actually better than all of the other LMGs in the category, which is nice to see considering the role that this was meant to fill. But on top of that, we also saw movement speed buffs here. Our base walking speed was slightly buffed to 4.7 meters per second. Our crouch movement speed was massively buffed from 2.1 meters per second up to 4.3 meters per second. Our sprint speed was buffed nicely up to 6.3 meters per second. And our aim down sight movement speed was buffed up to 2.7 meters per second. And all of these values are now clear standouts in the LMG category. And that, combined with the previous handling buffs I just covered, that's where this gun should be. When I made my gun guide on this, it was clear that they were trying to make this fit into the assault rifle LMG hybrid role, like somewhere in the middle. Yet, in my opinion, it was taking far too many of the downsides of LMGs, and it wasn't really standing out in that category in the way that you would expect a gun that's designed to fit that role. Now, after these buffs, this truly does seem to fit right where I would expect it to fit for filling out that role. And at least on paper, keeping in mind I haven't had a chance to get any playtime in with this yet, this is looking really good and much more along the lines of what I wanted to see with the FENG 82. After that though, let's get into the marksman rifle category, and the Swat 556 saw some nice buffs here. And these buffs were to our burst delay values, both with and without the rapid fire attachment. As you can see, without rapid fire, our burst delay went from 250 milliseconds down to 220 milliseconds, and with rapid fire, this went from 200 milliseconds down to 170 milliseconds. So this is a very noticeable improvement in both of those cases. We're going to be able to get that follow-up burst out a little bit faster. One thing I want to point out here, you might notice some of my numbers are a little bit different from what I've shared in the past. This is because it's very hard to accurately hand test exact rate of fire and burst delay values. But now that they have shared burst delay values, that also helped me refine the rate of fire values. But in either case, this isn't going to have an effect on our 1 burst kill potential at all, since it's only affecting the delay between our bursts. But obviously, this is going to noticeably improve our time to kill potential if we require that second burst to get a kill, both with or without rapid fire. Now, of course, anytime there's a rate of fire adjustment, we should also be looking at recoil, because even if they're not touching the recoil values, the fact that the rate of fire is faster can have an impact on what your recoil looks like. So let's have a look at that. But before we look at the side-by-side comparison, I just wanted to play the recoil tests using rapid fire, since most people will be using that with the Swat 556, mainly so you can just hear the difference in the burst delay. That's one of the best ways to display this. So we're going to start this with the pre-patch testing, and then we'll just fade into the post-patch tests, again with rapid fire in both of these cases. So I would say that's definitely a noticeable difference with that burst delay. It's going to be a lot more forgiving. And recoil-wise, there's really not much of a difference since we are still getting recentered between each burst. The burst delay isn't so short that it doesn't recenter. So overall, some excellent buffs here to the Swat 556. Now after that, for the marksman rifle category, the Tsarkov 7.62 just saw some small improvements to shot queuing. And this is just to help prevent those accidental follow-up shots. If you're spamming the trigger on it, sometimes you get that additional shot that you didn't mean to fire. That should be happening at least less often now. And then finally for marksman rifles, the AEK 973 saw a buff to its full auto mod. So this doesn't apply to the base gun, but just the full auto mod itself. And what they did here is they buffed our headshot values both with and without the CHF barrel while using this mod. So now at any range without the CHF barrel, it requires 2 headshots mixed in with body shots to reduce the number of shots to kill, whereas previously headshots were practically useless. You could technically get a 4-shot kill in the maximum damage range if literally every shot hit the head, which is not really all that practical. And then with the CHF barrel, in that maximum damage range, we just need 1 headshot mixed in to cut that down to a 4-shot kill. Whereas for the other 2 ranges, we're actually not seeing any benefit to using the CHF barrel, since it's also going to require 2 headshots mixed in, just like you would see without the barrel. So that's nice to see. I honestly think the full auto mod is just fine as is, but I'm not opposed to a buff to the headshot multiplier here to make it noticeably better than it was previously if you are landing those headshots. After that, there was a bug fix for the fast mag attachments on sniper rifles. Sometimes after an empty reload when using fast mag, it would require an extra rechamber animation. That should be taken care of now. Then in the marksman rifle category, for the knife, the baseball bat, and the power drill, all of these saw a slight buff to their lunge ranges. And keep in mind, the values they share in the patch notes, they don't align with the values that you see when you're pinging enemies. And this is likely just due to various offsets, either with the player model or the capsule surrounding the player model. It just causes those ranges to look different than what they're actually coded as. But I'm going to stick to these ranges that I can actually test in-game rather than sharing the distances they're sharing in the patch notes, because that allows me to accurately and consistently test for these values. And as you can see with the knife, it's a very slight improvement here. It went from 1.7 meters to 1.8 meters. The baseball bat was a bit more of a noticeable improvement, from 2 meters up to 2.2 meters, so it now matches the lunge range of just using the gun butt. And then finally, the power drill saw a very big improvement from 1.6 meters all the way up to 2.1 meters, which I think was desperately needed for the power drill. I do consider that to be the worst melee weapon in the game, although now with this big increase to lunge range, I wouldn't necessarily immediately write this off. And then finally, for weapon/attachment changes, they buffed the underbarrel crossbow in a few different ways. The first thing they mentioned here is they increased our ammo count by 1. However, this part of the update still hasn't gone live yet. They mentioned it will be coming soon in an upcoming update though. The next thing they did is they increased our zoom level when aiming down sight with the crossbow out. And as we can see, when we fade from pre-patch into post-patch, this gives you noticeably more zoom so you can line up that shot at a distance much easier than you could previously. And then the final thing they mentioned here is they increased projectile velocity and they reduced the initial vertical velocity. So when it comes to that increase to our projectile velocity, based on my hand testing across a distance of 80 meters, this is just like an average velocity over 80 meters. And pre-patch was about 46 meters per second, and post-patch, it's about 48 meters per second. So it appears to be a very minimal change to the overall velocity. And then additionally, when we're talking about that reduction to the initial vertical velocity, this just has to do with the fact that in close ranges, that bolt previously would actually be hitting a little bit high on your target. So you'd have to aim slightly below your target, especially if they were on a head glitch, for instance, and all you can see is their head. You didn't want to aim right at their head, otherwise the bolt would just go over their head. You had to aim slightly low. That has now been fixed, so it's more of a flat trajectory straight off of the center of your screen. And that means now post-patch with the crossbow in close quarters, you just want to put that reticle right on them and you'll get the hit. And that wraps it up for all of the weapon and attachment adjustments that we saw. Now let's go over some of the other key changes that came with this update, at least the important changes that actually affect the gameplay. I'm not going to go over every little UI bug and everything that changed, but the first really big thing I want to talk about here is spawns. They mentioned in the patch notes that for Team Deathmatch, they adjusted spawning logic to reduce the chances of flipping too soon, and that's exactly what I wanted to see them do with Team Deathmatch, so I'm happy to hear that on paper at least. And then with domination, they did the opposite. They made it so the spawns can flip at least a little bit easier, but they also clarified they still want players to spawn near their own zones. So from the sounds of it, it looks like they're trying not to overdo it in domination and just make it so it's a little bit harder to like full-on spawn trap enemies, but there's still going to be some decent logic there as it relates to the flags that you own. And then finally for spawns, they mentioned that for all modes, they increase the time that a death will affect enemy spawn positions, and this should result in less immediate flipping. And overall, when it comes to judging spawns, it's way too early to tell at this point. I'm going to need some proper playtime to really judge this for myself, but on paper, this is exactly what I wanted to see. Less flipping in team deathmatch, a little bit more flipping in domination, or just at least a slight reduction to how extreme the spawn traps could be in domination. So time will tell in this one. Perhaps I'll make a video in the coming days once I get some playtime with this, sharing my thoughts on these adjustments. But after that, with the Shrapnel Radar perk, explosive kills will no longer activate a Shrapnel Radar ping score event. That's only meant to apply if you've damaged somebody with an explosive and then finished them off with your gun. And then for the Tracker perk, they address an issue where some enemies were not being pinged in free-for-all while using Tracker. As for score streaks, they fixed an issue where if a player was using a weapon-based score streak, like the hand cannon or the war machine during their current life, they would sometimes be unable to obtain the nuke after 30 normal weapon kills, and those streaks are meant to contribute toward the nuke. And then another thing is, with the hand cannon, they address an issue where the hand cannon did not contribute toward score streak medals, and I believe that's referring to things like the bloodthirsty medals or the merciless medals or ruthless medals, for instance. Then with movement, they address an issue where strafing into prone could result in a third-person animation pop, so just some crazy things going on if you perform that movement. And then there was a good handful of UI bugs and adjustments here. I'm not going to read through everyone because most of them are either really edge case bugs or they just have no impact on your gameplay experience whatsoever. But a couple highlights here. For the gun game scoreboard, it now displays score eliminations and your ratio. They improved navigation when editing loadouts. They added a mute player button while in a body shield. And then they just addressed a certain crash that took place, as well as some duplicate game modes showing up in private matches. And then finally, with graphics, they address an issue that would occur when doing a benchmark. And then they just mentioned they addressed various stability issues with the game. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for all of the changes that took place with the Season 2 Reloaded update for the multiplayer side of things in Black Ops 6. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about this update so far? Are you guys generally happy with these changes and improvements, or not so much? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.